Imagine being just 7 years old and already showing signs that football could become your entire life. For Jude Bellingham, that journey began in Birmingham, England. Born on June 29, 2003, Jude grew up in a football-loving family. His father, Mark Bellingham, was a prolific non-league striker, and from an early age Jude was surrounded by football. He also had a younger brother, Job, who would eventually follow his own path in professional football. But even as a child, Jude seemed different. He wasn't simply interested in scoring goals. He wanted the ball constantly. He wanted to understand what was happening around him, where his teammates were positioned, where the opposition was moving, and how he could influence the game. At just 7 years old, Jude joined Birmingham City's academy. This was the beginning of a journey that would eventually take him to the biggest stadiums in Europe. Inside the academy, coaches quickly noticed his unusual combination of technical ability, intelligence, confidence, and physical strength. Jude could play several positions and wasn't afraid of responsibility. He learned how to defend, how to carry the ball through midfield, how to pass under pressure, and how to attack. Instead of developing him into a player who could only perform one job, Birmingham's academy helped him become a complete midfielder. The most impressive part was his mentality. Jude wasn't intimidated by older players. He wanted to compete against them, learn from them, and eventually beat them. As Jude continued to develop, his rise through Birmingham's academy became impossible to ignore. He was regularly playing against players older than him and still looked comfortable. Eventually, the club decided that he was ready for senior football. In August 2019, Jude Bellingham made his first team debut at only 16 years and 38 days old, becoming Birmingham City's youngest ever first-team player. Suddenly, the teenager who had been playing academy football was sharing a pitch with experienced professionals. The pressure could have been overwhelming, but Jude handled it with remarkable maturity. He didn't play like a 16-year-old trying to survive professional football. He played like someone who believed he belonged there. During that season, Jude became one of the most exciting young players in the championship. He made 41 appearances and scored 4 goals, but his impact couldn't be measured by goals alone. He carried the ball forward, won possession, created opportunities, and constantly demanded responsibility. His performances attracted attention from clubs across England and Europe. Scouts started traveling to Birmingham to watch him. Bigger clubs began asking questions. And soon, Jude had to make the first major decision of his career. In 2020, Europe's biggest clubs were interested in him, but Jude chose Borussia Dortmund. The German club had developed a reputation for giving young players opportunities and turning them into superstars. Players such as Jadon Sancho had already shown what was possible at Dortmund, and Jude believed Germany would provide the perfect environment for his development. At only 17 years old, he left England and moved to a completely different country. He was leaving his childhood club, leaving his familiar surroundings, and stepping into one of Europe's biggest football leagues. Move immediately showed Jude's ambition. On his Dortmund debut, he became the youngest player in the club's history to score, but the goal was only the beginning. Dortmund quickly realized that they had not signed an ordinary teenager. Jude could play almost anywhere in midfield. He could sit deep and help build attacks, press opponents, win tackles, carry the ball through pressure, and arrive inside the penalty area. His physical development also helped him compete against much older players. He was strong enough to handle challenges, quick enough to escape pressure, and technically gifted enough to make difficult situations look simple. Champions League provided another test. Europe was watching, and Jude was suddenly playing against some of the best teams and players in the world. Many young footballers become cautious when they reach this level. Jude did the opposite. He demanded the ball. He wanted responsibility. He wanted to be involved in the biggest moments. His performances against elite opposition made it clear that he wasn't simply a promising teenager. He was developing into a serious European talent. In 2021, Jude helped Borussia Dortmund win the DFB Pokal, giving him his first major senior trophy. And while he was still incredibly young, his importance to the team continued growing. Season after season, his role became bigger. His passing became sharper, his movement became smarter, and his attacking contribution increased. He was no longer just the young player learning from experienced teammates. He was becoming one of the players others looked toward. By the 2022-23 season, Jude Bellingham had transformed completely. He was wearing the captain's armband for Dortmund despite being only 19 years old. He was controlling matches, scoring goals, creating chances, and leading from midfield. His performances were so impressive that he was named Bundesliga Player of the Season and Dortmund's Player of the Season. European football now understood what Birmingham had discovered years earlier. Jude Bellingham was special, but Dortmund couldn't keep him forever. The biggest clubs in Europe wanted him. Liverpool were interested. Manchester City were interested. Real Madrid were watching closely, and Jude had another enormous decision to make. He could return to England, join one of the Premier League's biggest clubs, or move to Spain and become part of Real Madrid's next generation. In the end, he chose Madrid. In 2023, Real Madrid signed Jude Bellingham from Borussia Dortmund for a reported fee of around €103 million before potential add-ons. He was only 20 years old, but Madrid weren't signing him simply as a future project. They expected him to contribute immediately. He was walking into a club where winning wasn't an ambition, it was an expectation. And waiting for him in Madrid were some of the biggest names and greatest expectations in football. But what happened next was something almost nobody expected. Because Jude Bellingham didn't simply adapt to Real Madrid. He took over. From the moment Jude Bellingham arrived at Real Madrid, the pressure was enormous. The club had lost legendary midfielders from its previous generation, and the expectations placed on its new stars were enormous. Jude had to adapt to Spanish football, a new language, a new tactical system, and the pressure of playing for one of the most famous clubs in history. But instead of taking months to settle, he immediately started producing. Goals, assists, powerful runs into the box, defensive work, and moments of individual brilliance quickly became part of his game. One of the biggest changes in Madrid was his attacking role. At Dortmund, Jude had often played as a central midfielder, controlling the game from deeper positions. At Real Madrid, he was given more freedom to move forward. Suddenly, he was appearing inside the penalty area, making late runs, creating chances, and scoring regularly. His ability to arrive at exactly the right moment became one of his biggest weapons. Defenders could follow the forwards, but then Jude would appear from midfield and attack the space they had left behind. His first season became extraordinary. Jude scored important goals almost immediately and quickly became one of Real Madrid's most important players. But perhaps the moment that truly announced him to the world came against Barcelona. In El Clásico, with millions watching around the world, Jude produced a dramatic late winner. He didn't simply score a goal. He changed the result of one of the biggest matches in football and celebrated in front of the Barcelona crowd. Suddenly, the teenager from Birmingham was becoming one of the faces of Real Madrid.